Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey guys, before we kick off on the episode, I want to introduce you to a new phase of the Home Building Hub. We have decided to go back to school, that is SKOOL. We've created a community based on the back of a podcast we've been running for so long now. We've created a community for you, for all home buyers to jump in and get access to a whole range of tools, checklists, information, and most importantly, find other home buyers in there so you can follow people's journeys, you can share your own journey, and we're excited to build the most trusted community that is independent and objective in the whole country. So get in there, it's skoolschool.com. Look up Home Building Hub, download the app, come and say hi, and we will see you in there. Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Home Building Hub. You're with Colin and co-host Darren Brennan as always. And today, Darren, we're going to cover off something that's about to hit the Victorian shores in terms of buyer protection laws, 1st of July 2026. So we've got our heads around some of it. So we're just going to sort of share what we know. And as always, don't quote us on every single thing. We're just trying to share the news and make sure you as a buyer and for anyone who's in the building side of things actually watching or listening sort of, pay attention as well. So, yeah. How you going today, mate?
Going really well. Yeah, going great, mate. It's an interesting topic, Colin, because I don't think there's a lot being spoken about it as much as it should be, given the, significant impact this could be having on the industry. So, it's good that we're talking about it. And as you say, we're trying to learn on the hop here as much as anything, because it's not really been laid out as well as it possibly could have been, given the circumstances that are at play. So, it's going to be a good topic, mate. And I know you're across it a bit more than I am, so I get to sit back and enjoy the ride a little bit today. But mate, let's kick it off. But I guess why are they doing this? And the real main reason is due to Port of Davis style collapse from a few years ago. Things like uninsured contracts, which was exactly the case with Port of Davis, defective works, which we see happen with builders at times, and buyer vulnerability. And that's certainly a concern for people when they are looking at new builds. So it's there to try and overcome a whole lot of that. And the real intent is stronger consumer protection and faster access to help, and again, that's one of the big complaints is what do we do if something goes wrong? How's it handled? Who do we go to? It takes too bloody long, et cetera, et cetera. So, essentially it's providing better protection if a builder does not finish work or defects appear, which is great, without the need to necessarily go through an expensive legal fight first. And again, I think that's really good for the consumer, and I think that's going to help. It's also good for the builder because there's an out at the end of that as well, right? That we come to a end, and there's a judge in the middle of that, being the BPC, and you'll touch on that. Really will help define what needs to and what doesn't need to be done. So it'll help both sides of the scale on that. Some of the key changes, are more related to buyers, obviously, and this all kicks off in how many days is that, Cole? That looks like about 25 days to me, on the 1st of July, 2026. So we're recording on the 5th of the 6th, so 5th of June. So this will go live in the coming days, but it's coming up bloody quickly, mate.
It does, yeah. So I guess we wanted to cover some of the points for you as a home buyer, and as I said, some people who are in the industry listen to this too. So one of the first things we'll kick off is, and we'll go high level. We're not going to try and get into too much nitty gritty. There's a couple of things I guess, go into a bit more detail on, but not all of them. So one of the things in general, they're basically, the buyer protection laws are going to be introduced in 1st of July. One of the things that relate to that, which is already sort of in place, is something they've put in place and gone back and forth over, is just more FYI for you as a consumer. There's a lot more scrutiny on builders' financial health. The minimum financial requirements, all that sort of stuff. Some of these things that you won't quite understand or maybe haven't heard of, but builders certainly know about them. But basically, there's a lot of back and forth that's been had, potentially more to come. Just for the sake of, I guess, flagging this for this in general, just for anyone listening, the new scheme, I guess insurers have a much more exposure than they did under traditional insurance. So essentially what's happening in the background there is the builder's financial performance is going to come under greater scrutiny. What level that is still, that's definitely what's been the debate in recent months. But essentially, their insurance capacity can become harder to obtain. So, insurance on how much insurance they actually can get. Builders with weaker financials will then find it quite difficult, and to grow because their financials don't allow that, and they'll be the regulators will say no dice, you won't be able to get that much insurance. We'll take some off you, not give you any more, and things like that. So there's people in place, and I guess regulators in place to now make this process a little more locked down for the comfort of a consumer or a home buyer is really the point. It does make it difficult for some circumstances for builders, but that's probably more the aim is to improve the stability. And as I said, it could make it harder for builders trying to scale, but it's coming from the right place. But there's always a million different variables, isn't there, Darren? So that's one of the things. A major one for builders to navigate in the background, which doesn't necessarily relate directly to buyer protection laws, but it's just more of a heads up because it's on topic. That's all. So,
For sure.
yeah.
I think also, Cole, it's interesting on that because sometimes really smart business people are quite not risk adverse, the opposite, they're risk takers. And that's what allows them to grow
Mm,
because they've got the guts to have a go and really, have a crack at that. And sometimes that's what grows some of these really big businesses. I'm sure, and I'm certainly not pointing at any of them directly, but some of these big businesses, they took big risks in times gone by. Metricon, Simmons, the like of that. They've been around for a long, long time, right? And well done to them. But I'm sure along the way they've gone, we have to have a crack here, and well done to them. And they've stood the test of time.
yeah.
So I'm not suggesting they've done anything other than being really good business people, and well done to them. That's allowed them to become huge businesses. And often businesses do that. You hear of Elon Musk and these sort of guys. They take big risks,
Mm,
but they get big rewards. And often along the way, it doesn't mean they always get it right, but without those big risks, they'd never get to the sizes of what they are. And this may impede that actually happening. It takes away some of that. Yeah, and it's a skill as well that they sort of have, I guess. So it's quite interesting to sort of see where that sits. But
yeah.
anyway, it's certainly going to be interesting. Like I say, that scaling of new players into the market is going to be much more difficult.
Yeah. And it's just
So
important that as I said, it's coming from the right place. So they're trying
yeah,
to
yeah, correct.
prevent what happened happening again, obviously.
Yep,
But in these cases, it can be very reactive, and the pendulum can swing too far one way.
yep,
And that's initially, I think, what's sort of the initial discussions led to, and gradually, people like our mate Keith at HIA lobbying to bring that pendulum back in line in the middle a little bit, for the betterment of builders, which ultimately is the betterment of the customer. And I think some people tend to forget that is if the
yep.
builders are well set and they're going well, ultimately the clients get that reward and benefit. But because of what happened, it's good that there's no choice but to put some of this stuff in play. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
couldn't
yeah,
have that
for
happen
sure.
again, obviously.
And you
So
also don't want
yeah,
cowboys out there,
no,
right?
that's
Who
right,
are
and there are a
taking
lot
back
of
the
those
business.
out
That's the
there.
other side of it, right?
Yeah,
You don't want cowboys because that's not ever going to be a great situation.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, cool. So with the domestic building insurance, that now becomes first resort home warranty, I think is what it's actually called. I've got that right. First resort home warranty.
yeah,
So under the current DBI, domestic building insurance system, a homeowner can generally only access insurance if the builder either dies, disappears, or becomes insolvent. So under the new first resort home warranty scheme, homeowners can make a claim for incomplete works, defective works, and non-compliant works without first needing to meet those previous events, right? So that's again a fairly positive outcome because sometimes the builder can just sit there not choosing not to make right what's wrong. And still be actively operating as a business. So it's going to put some pressure back on the builder there, which is, I think, a positive for the consumer. The insurer can step in earlier and help resolve the issues, organise rectification works, or compensate the homeowner where appropriate. In simple terms, the DBI is a last resort insurance scheme, whereas first resort home warranty is a first resort consumer protection scheme. So giving buyers access to assistance much sooner and reducing the risk of being left stranded in disputes with builders and then dragging out for an endless period of time. So um I think there's some positives to come out of that, Colin, for the consumer for sure. Um on the same note, introduction of automatic consumer cover is also what's taking place. So consumers are automatically covered once they enter into a insurable domestic building contract, even if the builder has not paid the premium. So if they sign the contract and the premium's not paid, they're still insured. Um, Obviously, there's pressure on then the builder to pay that premium. There's timelines which you'll cover off in a second. So higher cover limits as well. So our understanding is, as some of this is yet to be finalised too, is that the cover will be moving from the current $300,000 aggregate limit towards a $400,000 limit, with different limits depending on the type of claim. And so, I think again that's probably in line with people building bigger homes, some of those stage payments being of higher value than a $300,000 claim. So,
Yep.
and also the cost difference between what's being quoted by the original builder, if they have to get a new builder in, $300,000 may not cover that cost, in which case the $400,000 limit starts to assist in that space. So
No, that's good. And
it's
there's not
happening
many
now
houses you can get for 300 grand now. Like
for
it's
sure.
the 350 to 400 mark. And there are a lot of people left hanging because the insurance had not been taken out by a builder,
Yep.
and this now does address that. So, cross fingers, knock on wood that doesn't happen to you. But in the event it did happen, then you would be covered regardless, which is really, really good. So,
And it does take away, I think, in the Porter Davis case, the government stepped in and covered a whole lot of those uninsured contracts, but that comes at a massive cost.
yeah,
So by upping the premiums, controlling that amount, and making it automatic and enforceable, and the time limits that you'll run through now,
mm,
I think that's going to also help mean that the government's not having to step in and fund it.
yeah. The next one is changes to timing of insurance being taken out. And this is one I've been trying to wrap my head around for a while, Darren, because I thought it would be something that people were talking about, but they're not. So, firstly, understanding the current system. So, the building contract that you get given now can be signed and the insurance can be taken out at any stage after that. So, you could sign a contract today, Darren, but because your land's not titling for whatever, essentially the builder doesn't need to take out insurance and doesn't need to charge you a 5% invoice. So
Yep.
that's okay. It can sit on the shelf. So for titled land, a builder will take out insurance. You get a contract signed, they'll take out insurance, and then they'll issue a 5% invoice because they expect to start that job in the coming months, in 3 months, for example, and they will allocate some of their insurance capacity to your job, and off they go. But so it's not really impacting that. But in the case of untitled land, you could sign a contract now, like I said. As a client, you want to do that because you want to lock in your pricing, your price protection periods, and your promos you got, and all that sort of stuff. You want to sign the contract today, knowing that the land, let's say hypothetically, doesn't title for 12 months or 9 months or so. So essentially, you could sign the contract, and that could just sit on the shelf. And as I said, the builder doesn't need to obtain insurance at that stage. They wait until it's closer to titles, just the same as you as the buyer would wait until closer before you're worried about finance approval. There's no point getting a pre-approval now if your land's not titled, you know, for 9 months, 12 months. You'll do it at the time, right? So that's the current system. But what's changing is that the new framework, they're enforcing a time frame. So when you sign a contract, within 10 days of signing a contract, or the term they use, entering into a domestic building contract. So I don't know if that's if the client signs or the builder countersigns or whatever the intricacy of that is. But within 10 days of it being signed, the builder must obtain insurance. So that changes like a fair bit. It might not seem like a big deal, but from a builder's perspective, it is. So the builders apply and they're given insurance or a limit or a capacity, right? So big builders have plenty of capacity. That's why they're a big builder. But the smaller builders, not so much. So let's say, as an example, Darren, for easy numbers, let's say you had a smaller builder whose capacity was $1 million. So they can build two $500,000 houses,
Yep.
right? Or they could build three 300 and a little bit houses, right? Using the old system, what they could do is they could actually get 2 jobs in that are on titled land. They could sign those contracts and they could take out insurance on those jobs because they're titled and issue a 5% invoice to those 2 clients. But what they could also do is they could sign another 2 contracts on untitled land, right? But this really, what that does is it gives those, now he's got 4 clients, the builder. So the 2 clients who sign on untitled land, they lock in a price, they're happy, but it also gives the builder a pipeline to help manage their overheads, to help plan forward, to help lock in supplier agreements and go, look, I've actually got 4 jobs now. I've got 4 in this, two in the system coming up. So
Yeah.
maintain my rate. You know, I can actually afford to keep you going, blah, 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 right? Planning for supervisors, all that sort of stuff. But the reality is now you've got a new 10-day system. It actually puts a small builder in the position where they're like, well, I actually can't sign those contracts because I've already got my 2 jobs allocated. And therefore, I can't sign 2 new contracts, even though I'd love to, because I don't have the capacity to do it because I would be forced to get my insurance within 10 days of signing the contract. So essentially what that does is hinders their ability to plan forward and
Yeah.
prepare pipeline. So that's actually, I think we spoke to some builders about it, some bigger ones. They're like, yeah, we don't really care. We've got capacity. That's good. But I spoke to smaller ones and they're like, well, that is a major issue for us because it makes it pretty difficult to operate and plan forward. So the other side, that's one side is capacity. The other side is cash flow. So insurance premiums aren't free. You know, they cost a bit of money. You know, so it could be 4, 5, or 6 grand in some cases. Now, someone needs to pay for that. So I guess in most cases, the client will be the one paying for that upfront as part of their prelim fee to help cover the cost of the insurance. But for the builders, some builders actually go to contract for no cost, Aaron.
Yeah.
So we do that, right? So we go contract upfront, efficient process, no charge to do it. And now because of the 10-day rule, that breaks that process entirely. So unless the builder's willing to fund the 4 to 6K, or unless you now charge client 4 to 6K for it. So some bigger ones will just continue on as normal. We've got that confirmed. But some of the smaller ones just won't be able to afford to do that. 1, because they don't want to tap into capacity they don't have. And 2, they don't want to be funding and cash flowing all these insurance premiums upfront themselves.
And like you said, if they've got $1 million, for example, insurance coverage, they can't take on any more signed contracts than than the $1 million they've already got that are actually on site right now. So they're really stuck in this no man's land unless they don't count, unless they only count jobs that are on site.
No, they definitely count. Contract signed.
Yeah.
That's it. Like insurance
And
has to come.
because there's costs against it, right? And then that's why there's an level of insurable cost against that.
Yeah.
So they need to count it, but in some ways they should really, maybe the way around it is to count jobs that are on site only, but I can't imagine them doing that.
Yeah. Although I don't think they're going to change it. So what's disappointing is, I mean, if I'm a small builder now, I'm pretty annoyed because, the trade that I've got working for me now is like, well, you've only got 1 job lined up, rather than the extra 2 that I could have told you about, but I can't take on because of this 10-day thing.
Yeah.
So it actually significantly, I guess, advantages bigger builders with bigger capacity. And I don't think, I mean, good on them. But I don't think that helps the industry so much. It should be a little more even than that. So the reality is, even for bigger builders, I mean, are they going to want to front 4 to 6K for a premium? They're not going. At some point, it's a cash flow headache for them that they're not willing. Yeah, so they'll charge the client and so on and so forth. But hopefully, that's explained properly. But as in terms of the impact, now what I did, Darren, is I called the BPC, the HIA, and Consumer Affairs about this issue, and none of them had any idea what I was talking about when I raised it with them. And I said, look, this is a problem. Do you not see why, et cetera, et cetera? And well, not in an asshole way, but in a, have you guys thought about this? Because they're not the ones who put out the legislation. They're the ones trying to navigate their way through
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
So they're like, oh no, we sort of don't really, we're not aware and things like that. So that did surprise me. What this may lead to, Darren, I think, in the case of a small builder and the examples I've given, it might be that builders would have to introduce a different document up front, right? So it might be that they introduced something called a preliminary contract, which is essentially looks like, feels like, but is not a domestic building contract. It's
Yep.
got your quotes, got your pricing locked in, you sign it off, builder signs it off, and then it sits on the shelf. And as you get
Yes.
close to your title, you get a contract formally signed
Yep.
that matches the prelim one, and you can go to finance and they get their insurance and stuff at that time. I think that might be, in some cases, the only option.
And obviously, that's more like an agreement between two parties than a contract between two parties.
Yeah,
We're agreeing to build this house for this price for you, but it's not actually a contract.
yeah,
It's
and it'll
more,
be
yeah, like,
yeah,
almost like a handshake, isn't it? But
yeah,
formalizing it.
it'll still be formal. It'll still be an agreement, deed of agreement. Yeah, but that's probably the only option, I think, for the ones that are in that boat. So just a heads up for you that may be something that you enter, I suppose, before you enter an actual contract. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting, isn't it? It's
it is. Yeah.
certainly complex. Certainly complex. Um, so yeah, I guess the next step into that is that the Building and Plumbing Commission, which was launched about 12 months ago, um, officially, and that's called, deemed the BPC, becomes a central regulator for all of this stuff. Um, so, they were already in place, happened 12 months ago, as I said, but I think this uh, is more so to make it clearer the journey ahead. The VBA moving forward is for builders registration, licensing, audits, compliance, and enforcement. The DBDRB, or the Domestic Building Dispute Resolution, manage domestic building disputes between owners of builders, and that's sort of the lead in if you want to try and mediate a way out of a situation before you go to VCAT. And then after that, you've got the VMIA, which is the Victorian Managed Insurance Authority, which is managed by the Domestic Building Insurance. So yeah, it's again, your insurance is a separate identity again, and then instead of them all being separate, they're all going to be sitting under one headline, which is the BPC, which is the Building and Plumbing Commission. So it brings all them together for regulation, dispute resolution, and insurance functions all under the one roof. So hopefully it becomes a more efficient model rather than having to go to all three different parties.
Mm.
But they, under the same roof, they all sort of still exist.
Yeah. And they'll take 3 years to work out, work their way through, integrating all of that. But essentially, it's a good start, well intended. The BPC is now I guess the single source of truth, which is
Yeah.
that's actually a good outcome. I think that can, because I've been through it. You got bounced around from VBA to DBD to VMIA and back and forth, and whereas that's going to have to sort of all come together.
I hope as much as anything, as often is the case within government organisations, I just hope that it's not a name change for the sake of a name change. Stick a new badge on the front and
Mm,
polish it and make it look shiny and tell everyone it's now more efficient, and it's not behind the scenes.
yeah.
So that's going to be the interesting bit. But yeah,
Well, I
maybe
think
cover off on,
coming out with all these new changes and stuff, and this is just part of it. Like we're not we're covering just the surface, but it is an indication that they're serious and they're trying to address consumer sentiment, making sure that builders are are safe and ready to roll and not going south, in terms of the financials.
yeah,
So I think they're making some good headway. But like we said earlier, we want the pendulum to not just swing all the way one way. It needs to be practical as well.
yeah, for sure.
One of the things they've introduced, Darren, as part of this is rectification orders. And this is probably one of the bigger shifts. And
Yeah,
yeah, so I guess under the old system, if you, the homeowner, thought there were defects, generally what you'd have to do is raise it with the builder. And if that didn't work, you'd go to DBDRV and then potentially end up in VCAT. It's acronym crazy, right? But basically, you could wait months or years for an outcome there. Whereas with the new system, the BPC now will have the power to investigate alleged defective, non-compliant or work, sort of issues, issue a rectification order. So, which would require the responsible party, e.g., builder, and they can actually issue rectification orders to more than just a builder. But in this example, the builder to fix the work within a specified time frame. So the question is, what can it really cover? So essentially, a rectification order can cover defective building work, non-compliant work, incomplete work, works that do not comply with the Building Act, regulations or National Construction Code, and even work that creates, I guess, safety or amenity concerns. Okay, so they will outline, once that's lodged, they will outline what needs to be fixed, how it must be fixed, the time frame for it to be fixed, and evidence that must be provided to prove that it now has been fixed, rectified, or complies.
Yeah.
So um, that's a pretty big shift, and it makes sense. Like, hey, there's someone in the middle that can mediate this now, and advise both client and builder. Here's what the outcome's going to be, and then go forth and do it. Now, in the case that the builder or whoever it is that's been given the rectification order fails to comply, it can just lead to significant penalties, further action to be taken, and even leading to moving to the home warranty. Sorry, I keep calling it home warranty, but the first resort home warranty insurance, and potentially pursuing recovery through that channel. So historically, many disputes sat sort of in a grey area, I would say, where homeowners, they had to spend a lot of time. If they had something legit they were trying to get the builder to do, they had to spend a lot of time and a lot of money pursuing the builder through a dispute resolution program or channel, or even legal channels. A lot of the time unsuccessfully. So this new model gives the regulator much more power to remain and become active in that role. So instead of the owner says it's defective and the builder disagrees, the BPC can effectively say, we've investigated it, we've formed a view, and we're directing that this work can be rectified as follows.
Yeah.
So I think on the surface, again, the intent is positive for buyers and owners. I get where they're coming from. It's actually really good. Does beg the question, will rectification orders actually improve consumer outcomes though? Okay, so for
And
genuine...
on that, Cole, from my understanding is it's both ways too. So you can have an unreasonable owner expecting unreasonable outcomes, and they can step in and say, no, actually, the builder's done enough, right? But are they going to, is going to be the question. Then where does that play out? Because you want a fair outcome, right? You want a fair outcome for both parties. Yes, we're obviously always on the podcast pro builder, but we're also pro customer. Like, if someone's doing the dodgy, get in and fix a bloody thing.
Yeah.
Right. But equally, if someone's expectations are beyond what's reasonable, then that also needs to be reined in as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully it has the ability to do that.
Exactly right. And I think, we wouldn't do this podcast for how many years now? 3 years? If we weren't pro customer and pro builder. We remain as objective as we can. There's not one sales pitch on this podcast for 3 years, and there won't be, because we're trying to give you the information that we've got. So whether you agree with the changes or not, it's not really our fight, but we're just giving you the information we've got. So, and the potential thoughts in our own opinions on what that is and how that lies. So I guess realistically, as someone who's been through a builder liquidation, these changes are a breath of fresh air. They really are. But if I look at it another way, it could also open up Pandora's box. Going in line with what you said there, Darren, I would be interested to see, the BPC could be completely inundated with calls from homeowners wanting rectification orders on everything. Like, I got a loose door handle.
Yep.
I want it fixed. The builder's an asshole. They won't come out and fix me loose door handle. Things like that. We see this a lot, but there's actually quite a difference of opinion between what a builder deems acceptable and appropriate versus what a client may seem, appropriate or acceptable. And often, one example might be inspection reports, right? So an inspection report, the person in the middle goes out and they inspect it on behalf of the client. They come up with a 20, 30, sometimes 50-page report, and half of those pages are photos. And basically, they'll identify major items or non-compliant items that the builder will have to and will go and rectify. But then there'll be a whole long list of what would be more cosmetic items. And this is where it becomes a little bit grey, right? So the builder's like, well, I don't need to do that. It does comply. But you as
Yep.
the client are like, well, I want you to do it because it looks crap and it needs to look better. So
Yeah,
it'll
yeah,
be interesting where that sort of sits, where that lands. So those clients will go, well, here's my inspection report. I'm ringing the BPC. You can get stuffed, builder, and then the BPC, I don't envy them because they're going to cop all these calls. And I guess at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting to see how they manage that balance. Because you're right,
yep,
it could be good for the builder because now there's an outcome rather than the client sending 55 more emails or putting posts on product review or on Facebook groups. It could just be, well, the BPC has made the decision, so let's move
yep,
past it in favor of the builder or the client. That doesn't matter to me. Whatever's right is right. Whatever's wrong is wrong. It's got to be, you know, having someone in the middle would be good, but I just don't know how well prepared they could be for the inundation of phone calls, or maybe that doesn't happen, Darren. So it'll be
yep.
interesting to watch that um, and just sort of see how they handle that, I suppose. So especially those clients who are just, trying to milk it. Because unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. And those clients are going to take up the time of the genuine ones who have a legitimate, rectification order request,
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
um, yeah, coming from a good place, but can see quite a bit of a challenge just in terms of managing that. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Yeah, you're right, and the intention's good here, but it does raise other concerns, and as you say, you get the person who's trying to milk it, and will the BBC actually have enough um, people to handle this? That's going to be straight off the bat. That's one of the big concerns. Or are we just sending buyers down the path into a backlog of work that just sees as we mentioned earlier, just the same thing, just to change the name on the front door,
Mm,
which has been one of the issues. They're trying to stop some of that backlog, taking 2 years to get through. Someone to get to the DBDRV at the moment could be 3 to 6 months. Then they've got to wait if they're not happy with the outcome to get the VCAT. And VCAT could be a year. You're 18 months in, like it's crazy, and your house is sitting there with issues that should have already been fixed potentially.
yeah.
Or the reverse of that is you've got an unreasonable owner who gets the VCAT and finds out that no, it's thrown out the door because you're being unreasonable and what you're asking the builder to do is not going to happen. Both ends of that scale, but it just,
Mm,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how and where the BPC sits on that. And you
yeah.
don't want them to be pro builder and you don't want them to be pro customer. You want them to be neutral so that you get the right outcome,
Yeah. It'll
you
just be
know?
interesting to see how that lands because in our business, we do deal with a panel of builders, and from time to time, we've seen decisions made that we would have thought, oh, I tend to lean on the side of the client here. I'm not sure I agree, or vice versa, where we're saying to the client, no, the builder's on track, So now having that person in the middle will be interesting to see which way they tend to lean. It's going to be difficult,
For sure.
but it's good to have it nonetheless. So I need to say that it's not a negative thing; it's a positive thing. It's just it might take some time to align, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, on one hand, it could actually be, benefiting the builders as it can formally put to bed, client disputes, which will be great. But it can also have the opposite depending on the interpretation of that
Mm.
BBC officer, obviously. And it's also worth um, asking and worth noting that who actually pays for all this, right? Someone's going to have to pay. Like services like this aren't free. So our understanding is that the insurance premiums are meant to change to be consistent for all builders, which isn't finalised yet. But regardless of all this, there's still a lot of change, you know, with a lot of layers impacting a lot of people. So, you know, who's going to be left holding the bag to fund it? And we've got an issue already from a government point of view with lack of money. So, we don't really want this being funded by the government. But if there's not enough money coming in as part of the insurance and stuff, again, someone's going to have to pay for that. So that'll likely result in higher insurance premiums and other costs along the way, or other fees added to the cost of building. Which, again, we talk about cost of housing and trying to, provide affordable housing, but what we're potentially doing is adding more costs. So, yeah, it's a fun balancing act really to walk there, So, um, time will tell, Colin, I guess, as to, you know, uh, will this new function protect, home buyers? Ultimately, the question comes down to where the balance is for the BPC. Um, yeah, wouldn't like to be them, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It will, and then the builders will be watching closely, like, as well in terms of the money, because as a builder, I'd be sitting there thinking, "Well, I've got X dollars in my bill for maintenance, for a loose door handle, for those
Yeah,
things." But at the
yeah,
moment now, I've got the BPC who, if the pendulum swings too far down the cosmetic path as opposed to the very strict compliance path, then that means I'm gonna have to allow, $1,000, $5,000 into every job now to cover based on how they do view that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and it's not a case of that's, yeah. I guess from a client perspective, someone could think, well, shouldn't it be built properly and compliant the first time? I'm not really meaning that. I'm just saying that there is a grey area. It is subject to interpretation, and will that now be, you know, $2,000 worth of grey area that the BBC now, would enforce upon the builder, and therefore they'll have to put into their price to account for
yeah,
minor things like that. That's all. So, yeah, it will be interesting to learn how that comes in coming, I guess, 12 months or so, Darren. Yeah.
yeah,
Ultimately, I guess to wrap it up, it's a good win for home buyers. There's no doubt about that. And to a point, it seems like a pretty good win on some parts for builders too.
yeah,
Unfortunately, on some others, not so much. I just, yeah, given all the insolvencies we've had historically, as we said, it's a really good direction. We take that on board, and we're pro that. It would be nice if industry was consulted, as in a good spread of the builders. I'm sure some were consulted. I don't know for a fact, but I just feel like, based on, if this had been proposed, this 10-day thing to any small builder, they would have flagged it pretty quickly and said, guys, that's not going to work. So something like that could have resulted in a better outcome, a more fair outcome. Yeah. So one of the other things I guess I got a thought on, Darren, is these measures need to be put in place, and I guess what sort of bugs me a little bit is, whilst they had to be in place, that they're all consumer protection measures for after the fact, after something's already gone wrong. And
yeah,
what I'd
yeah,
love to see is the next step is we put some money back into the builders, and helping them, I guess, regarding education, additional resources, and whatever, I guess, means necessary to prevent the issues in the first place.
of
That
course.
would be probably more proactive and
Yeah, better
helpful.
training, education,
All that
um, you
stuff,
know,
ultimately
controlling
helping
of
the client.
licensing,
Yeah.
etc.
Because, I mean, we deal with small builders, they're doing a lot. They're wearing a lot of hats, so they don't have the resources necessarily
Yeah,
for
yeah,
everything, nor the time. So, yeah, a little bit more help on that proactively would be a beautiful, beautiful want, not necessarily a need.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
true, true, true.
Yeah. There you go.
Interesting topic, Cole. I think the path over the next few weeks, it's going to be interesting once this rolls out and how builders implement it. Who's even aware of it? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
I reckon there's going to be builders out there not even aware of this change happening.
yeah.
And all of a sudden they're going to be, shit, you didn't pay the insurance and you're up, we're coming after you. But hold on, I didn't even know I had to. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting watching how this plays out.
Yeah. We will see updates from our friends at HIA and MBA and all those.
Sure.
They will, as they're probably waiting for that final, piece of information to be confirmed before they really can actually give 100%.
Too much about it.
So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, I think their hands are tied to a degree as well, which is unfortunate because everyone would love to have, a 3-month runway
Yeah,
to,
yeah, of
to to
course.
have that in advance. But unfortunately, it's never the case. So, yeah, welcome to
Like we say,
building.
the intent's right. So that's a positive starting point. I know when we spoke to Keith Ryan, uh, a year ago, it was very much that case as well. So for the
Mm,
HIA, that the intention's right. So let's wait and see how the execution is. So
yeah,
this is the next round of execution.
it is. Awesome. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. We appreciate it. Gone a little longer than normal, but yeah, some interesting topics there we've covered. Hopefully, you've learned something from that, just to help you with whether you're buying now or sometime in the coming months or further down the track. So, if you like what you listen to, please jump on the platform you're on. Give us a 5-star review. We'd appreciate that. Spreads the podcast a little further, a little wider. Any questions? Jump on the website homebuildinghub.com.au. If you're looking for some resources, want to just learn a bit more, we've got a whole bunch in there in a school community. That's skool.com. Type in Home Building Hub, join there. Slowly building gradually, but there's heaps of resources that are really helpful, completely free. So jump in, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.
See you later, guys.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. And just our disclaimer, whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions.
1,